Hi, good afternoon, friends and colleagues. And welcome to the third webinar of USAID and Reliance Foundation Women Connect India Speaker Series, led by our esteemed panelists. Today, we will explore a few innovative technology solutions built and operated to offer relevant services to rural and marginalized communities in India over the next 1 hour. My name is Rupesh Datta. I'm a Gender and Technology Advisor at DEI Global and your host for the series. Thank you for joining us. The Women Connect Challenge India, rolled out jointly by USAID and Reliance Foundation, is the national version of the Women Connect Challenge initiative by USAID. The challenges, both national and international, support innovative projects which facilitate women's access to digital tools and solutions. The speaker series, planned as part of the India Challenge, was designed primarily for the India Challenge awardees, but is also relevant for the development organizations which are either working on or designing interventions around the prevalent gender digital divide in the country. In today's webinar, named Digital Solutions for Gender Digital Divide Program Design, we will learn about some innovative digital products across thematic areas, which are at different stages of their life cycle as well, and how these solutions are helping bridge the gender digital divide. For this, we have with us today Sarah Chamberlain from BBC Media Action India, who will share the lessons learned from scaling and transitioning Kilkari, an audio messaging program for pregnant women and new mothers, to the Ministry of Health after reaching 10 million families across 13 states and 5 languages. Then Nikita Bengeni will also from Quest Alliance will tell us about the Quest app, which offers interactive content for 21st century skills, hosted on an easy-to-use multi-device gamified platform. In partnership with the Department of Training and Technical Education and local nonprofits, the Quest app has been used by lakhs of youth across the country. A third speaker, Param Singh, founder and CEO of Moo Farm, has unfortunately had to miss the webinar for an unanticipated last-minute investor meeting. He wanted to speak about their digital solution designed to empower dairy farmers across the country and share the strategies his organization has adopted to engage women dairy farmers on the platform. He has sent his apologies to all of you and has requested that you reach out to him in case you're keen to know more about Moo Farm's work. We also have with us today representatives from the 10 awardee organizations of the first USAID and Reliance Foundation Women Connect Challenge India program. Thank you, speakers and participants, for making the time to attend this event. We will hear from our esteemed speakers in a minute, after which we will have an open Q&A round. So do jot down your questions while you hear our speakers so that you can ask them at the end. Our first speaker today is Nikita Bengeni, the Director of Youth Programs at Quest Alliance. She has been working in the domain of youth development with focus on creating meaningful learning experiences for young people, especially women, and is passionate about helping young people build their career journeys and self-learning mindsets. Nikita has also been a strong proponent of technology for learning and has led the conceptualization of the Quest app, a technology platform to build 21st century skills for youth at Quest Alliance. Welcome, Nikita. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Ritesh. Happy to be here and really excited, to engage with everybody on a very pertinent issue, which is gender and digital divide. So I hope we can have an engaging, meaningful conversation. We're able to bring about some really relevant solutions, which you all can take forward, adopt, and use in your context. So just a little bit about Quest, and I'll just start sharing my screen. I do have a deck. I thought it will just be far easier for all of us to, relate to what's happening if I just put some of these things on slides. So yeah, off I go. So just very quickly about, Quest Alliance, so that you can root some of the solutions that I'm going to talk about in the context we've been operating in and how we've been using our solutions. So we are about a 15-year-old organization called Quest Alliance based out of India. Our core mission is really to foster 21st century skills among young people by transforming existing learning ecosystems across school to work continuum. When I talk about existing ecosystems, these would mean government schools in the country, right from middle schools to secondary schools to institutions like industrial training institutes, which are run by government to provide vocational skills to young people who have chosen to go down the vocational pathway and not pursue formal education. And some of the core skills that we focus on as part of our work includes things like self-awareness, communication, relationship building, problem solving. And some of the thematics that we work across includes life skills, career development, digital literacy, and self-employment. So this is sort of the core focus of the work we do at Quest. And as I speak about the school to work continuum, we really focus on three strategic pillars. One being EdTech, which is how do we leverage technology to make teaching learning experiences more meaningful and relevant and empowering for our learners and educators as well. We also focus a lot on capacity building of different stakeholders in our ecosystem. So this sort of ranges between young women, learners, educators, leaderships, across all of these learning ecosystems that I spoke about. We really thrive on partnerships. We don't run our own learning centers, but we really believe in supporting existing learning ecosystems, the ones I spoke about. So we have extensive partnerships across the school to work continuum to really see how we can make these learning spaces more thriving and relevant for young people. So just moving on and talking a little bit about the expanse of our partnerships. So like Ritesh mentioned, we work very extensively with government ecosystem because we feel like the learners who are part of that ecosystem are the ones who really need a lot of the solutions and really need to experience empowering teaching learning experiences. So, and also like government works at the scale which really reaches out to the most rural spaces in India. So we have a partnership with Ministry of Skills Development and Entrepreneurship, where we focus on building digital content, technology platforms, and really helping government to move towards more blended learning experiences. We work extensively with state governments and departments of employability and training across 6 states of the country. We also work very closely with education ministries across different states. So this is all the different work we do. And apart from working with the government, we also have about 25 other civil society partners who we work with, co-create our theory of change, and really take the narrative forward on focusing on 21st century skills and self-learning behaviors for young people. So this is a little bit about us as Quest. Just in the context of this conversation today, and I'm sure a lot of y'all are already aware of what I'm going to just speak about, but given, there is a lot of conversation around digital divide being at play, and this sort of was felt a lot more strongly during the COVID times, learn their educational spaces, but were then resorted back home, and hence not having access to digital really impacted their learnings in a very negative way. So we keep running these digital access surveys from time to time to see how is the access situation looking like. And of course, there's a very strong positive movement towards more and more young people having access, but still it remains dismally low. And this number is even lower when it comes to our women learners across the board. So we ran this survey across the country with about 8,000 young people, about 250 educators. And what we really learned is that, the access has increased for a lot of people, but it's not like a lot of our young people have access to their own personal devices. So even if they have access, it's largely shared phones in the family. It's, siblings' phones or friends. So they maximum get access to 1 or 2 hours in a day. Some of them also get it for a couple of more hours, but it's not really, more than that. And apart from that, even the ones who have access don't necessarily get online very seamlessly because there are strong network issues, and this becomes even worse when you go to more interior parts of the country. And also the other interesting thing that keeps coming back is that even the ones who have access, they're not necessarily still being able to use because they don't have ability to keep recharging their phones and keep putting in data packs. So that becomes the other big deterrent. So when we asked our young learners that what would really help you get to digital, and they really spoke about both these things, that having an access to a phone that's their own so that they're able to get onto it as and when they need to, and also if there is a provision to provide them some kind of an access through internet packs, that would really help them in a big way. So taking forward some of these thoughts, and this is something we've been building out for almost last 5-6 years, something we call the Quest app. So as Quest, a big focus for us is to move towards blended learning experiences. while traditionally all of us have, really learned in classrooms which are largely trainer-led or teacher-led, but we realize that, those are not necessarily always spaces which caters to needs of every young person inside the classroom. So how do we really, bring a balance between self-paced learning and self-led learning, two teaching learning processes that a trainer leads? So we've been a big propagator of blended learning experiences, which is a combination of both these things. So this platform that I'm going to talk about briefly over the next 2-3 minutes, which is called the Quest app, is a platform with a whole bunch of gamified digital learning content across the thematics that I spoke about, including life skills, career development, financial literacy, digital literacy. And coupled with that is the teacher-led processes where young people come into the classroom or come to a common, a Zoom call or a virtual call to really then also apply what they would have learned on their own, ask questions, support each other. A trainer really plays the role of a coach and a mentor, and it's not necessarily just a knowledge giver. So how do we really capitalize on what digital can do well, which is really impart conceptual knowledge, coupled it with, human interactions, which are led by trainer, and, how do you really look at the interplay between both of these ways of learning? So going forward, as part of the Quest app, oops, I'm not able to move my screen forward. Are you guys still being able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Nikita. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just stuck. Just give me a moment. I'm going to start sharing again, perhaps. Sorry about this. Talk about technology, learning.
I know. Digital has a funny bone.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. So it's moving forward again. So yeah, sorry, just moving again forward. So some of the things that, what Quest app really, the kind of experience it creates for young people, so one, I wanted to just say one thing up front, that it's not just a content repository. Oftentimes as digital solution makers, we end up creating something where we just host digital content and we feel that, okay, we have an application through which we can deploy digital content, but that really doesn't work. Digital learning has to be built from the lens of digital experience first, kind of a thought process, because oftentimes, and this happened a lot as trend in the COVID times, especially, right? A lot of us were used to doing classroom-based trainings. And when COVID happened, we just thought that we can just take the same kind of a training and now do it virtually. But that does not work. If you're doing things digitally, you have to lead with digital first as a core focus. So some of the things that, we have built out as part of our digital learning journeys on this platform is that one, it caters to multiple kinds of users who are a stakeholder in the learning ecosystem. So you can log in as a student, you can log in as a trainer, and you can also continue to learn on this platform as an alumni. Even after you've sort of graduated, there are still courses that are catering to alumni. They want to come back, revisit some of the things. So all of that is available. What you see here is kind of the library page, which gives you a snapshot of all your activities, the courses you're learning, the badges you may have earned, what is happening on the discussion forum. So all of it you get as a snapshot right up front. This is kind of the digital, the library where all of our content across all of these areas that I spoke about rests. And as you can see, you can choose the language in which you prefer to learn. While you see all of this interface in English at the moment, we're also in the process of translating a lot of this interface into multiple languages in India. So soon you'll also see this platform in multi-languages as well. So apart from this, we also have a discussion forum. So as learners learn, trainers are free to use this as a space to trigger conversations, for learners to ask doubt, to be able to engage in certain kind of conversations. So, it's not just learn, but it's also about connecting. So I was just talking about the fact that we also have a jobs feature as part of our platform, where learners are being able to see jobs information, all the job opening in real time, so that, and especially for young girls, there is a lot of mobility issues. Oftentimes parents are not allowing them to go out for work. So oftentimes, they're looking for work from home opportunity, and these kinds of features really enable some of that. And also just the last bit on this is that, as part of the learning process, it's very important for learners to be able to see their progress and have a certain sense of movement and feeling recognized about what they're learning. So we also have this profile page where you're able to see all the badges you may have earned, all the scores, that you may have received, or all the points that you may have earned while learning on the application. So it's really a holistic experience from a learning point of view and not necessarily just a content repository. So in the nutshell, like some of these things I've already spoke about, but I just want to highlight two things here, that it also offers a very comprehensive learning management system to you as an organization, where you're able to manage your learners, you're able to see their progress in a more holistic manner. Facilitators are being able to keep a track of where the learners are and provide them adequate support. They're able to customize learning processes in the back end based on the needs of the learners. And also there is a holistic dashboard available at an organizational level. So if you're multiple centers running, multiple schools running, then you're able to also, see in a comprehensive manner what's happening across the board and where are each sets of your learners and what they're doing. So just moving on, this is something I already spoke about, so I'm going to skip this, but this really talks about just all the content that we currently host on the application. So just from here, moving on into a little bit more about how, so, it's one thing to build all of these solutions, but the other thing, so I was just talking about the fact that how do we navigate through these socioeconomic barriers when it comes to women and taking these solutions to our women. So a couple of things, based on the digital divide access survey, et cetera, that we did, a couple of things that came about was that how do we enable access to devices for young people. So, we came up with a very interesting concept called the mobile phone libraries, where we equipped a lot of our institutions with a bunch of mobile phones. And just as you issue books in a library, you could issue these phones for about 21 days. And there are a certain set of skills, with which we loaded the content with. But the core idea with it, and all of y'all would be thinking that how in 21 days would a young person actually end up learning everything they need to learn? But the idea with the mobile library was not necessarily just to give access to learning content by giving access to a phone, but it's really about, a lot of young girls experiencing what does it mean to learn digitally. And more than them, actually, it's their families being able to see certain relevance and value in their daughters and girls having access to digital. So a lot of the content here is not just the skills that you need to learn, but really about, one, the experience of it. And secondly, it's also about how you are able to negotiate certain things with your parents. So at this stage, I'm going to just play a quick video which talks about this whole concept of mobile library very quickly. I'll just play this. Yeah. So you really saw what all is part of the mobile library and what is really the thought process behind doing this. So far we've sort of done about 22 mobile libraries across the country, benefiting about 500 plus learners in the country. The other thing that we've also started to do is to do data pack distribution for young girls, especially because even though, like I said, 55% women may have access, but of which, at least in our target group, we've seen that only 10 to 15% get online. So this has again seen a big boost. This number increased significantly when we actually started to distribute data packs to our learners. The other thing, apart from a lot of the learners who don't have access to smartphones but have access to feature phones, we've also been extensively using this 8x8 virtual conferencing app, which works on a feature phone, and it basically connects a whole bunch of learners to a call, which is an audio call, and you could talk about a lot of these things, and plus also have this chat function to sort of continue some form of learning. And like I said, that parents play a really, really critical role in women having access. So apart from providing access to content, platform solutions, access to content, data, devices, I think what becomes really, really critical and a game changer is that how do we engage parents and build a certain mindset about giving access to women, because the social factors become really critical for us to navigate through. So we record these voice messages with principals and some influencers, which impact parents a lot more, and put these things out to parents of these young women to be able to support their access. And we've been sending out like messages through IVRS for non-smartphones. We send audio recordings through WhatsApp. So this has actually been really, really integral to our approach as well. So yeah, I'll stop at that. If you are curious about this more and you'd like to use the solution, this is free for any young person, any educator to use. If as an organization you want to integrate the solution into your programming in a more structured manner, we'll be more than happy to partner with you, as a knowledge partner. If you are interested in seeing a further demo, write to me at Nikita at questalliance.net. And you could also check out more details about the Quest app on questapp.in. So yeah, I'll stop here, Ritesh, and hand it over to you back. But I'm sorry about all the tech glitches that happened along the way, but I hope this was useful.
No, I mean, I think this was very, very useful, Nikita. Thank you. And these tech challenges are things we sort of constantly live with, so completely understandable. Thank you so much. Our next speaker today, jumping right on, is Sarah Chamberlain, Digital Director for BBC Media Action in India, where she is responsible for designing and scaling mobile services for low literate, low income communities. She has been at the forefront of digital communications in the development sector for 23 years, and her solutions have benefited millions of people, won many awards, including 3 GSMA Global Mobile Awards, a Microsoft Education Award, Gold and Bronze Cyber Lions at the Cannes International Advertising Awards, and 2 BAFTA nominations. Sarah has designed and delivered digital capacity building programs for nonprofits across the world. She has published widely, and in fact, today she is sitting in a rural part of Madhya Pradesh and has taken the time to discuss her learnings and experiences with us. Thank you, Sarah. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ritesh. And I am, like Nikita, going to turn off my video in hopes that that will enable me to continue presenting effectively. All right. Great. Okay. So over the past decade, there has been huge growth in the number of digital programs for women in India, including for health, nutrition, education, skills development, livelihoods, gender equality, rights, and more. But although donors have made a notable shift in recent years from funding small pilots to funding scale-ups, many digital interventions, particularly for low literate, low income women, still struggle to achieve both scale and sustainability. So when I say sustainability, what I mean is what happens when the donor funding runs out. Does your program collapse or does it continue? So, sorry, 1 second. Oh, now my slides are not advancing. Oh, there we go. All right. For the next 10 minutes, I'm going to reflect on the lessons that BBC Media Action, which is the international development NGO of the BBC, has learned from designing and scaling a suite of mobile health services for women in rural India. These services are Mobile Academy, which is an IVR-based training course for frontline health workers, which refreshes their knowledge of healthy reproductive, maternal, and neonatal health behaviors and improves their interpersonal communication skills. Mobile Kunji, an IVR and print-based job aid for frontline health workers, which improves the quality of their interactions with families. And Kilkari, a mobile health education service that provides pregnant women, new mothers, and their families with timely, accessible, accurate information about RMNCH. And it addresses both wives and husbands and reinforces the information communicated by frontline health workers. So BBC Media Action first designed and tested these mobile health solutions in Bihar between 2011 and 2013. And we used IVR technology because in 2011, both frontline health workers and mothers in rural Bihar only had access to very basic keypad phones. In fact, only 9% of frontline health workers had ever sent an SMS at the time. The situation has improved considerably since then, but it's still critical to remember that as per the GSMA in 2021, only 25% of adult women in India own a smartphone. And in states such as Madhya Pradesh, only 26% of women are able to read and open an SMS. So this is the context that we have to keep top of mind, right? The gender digital divide. So the suite of mHealth that we developed have all been independently evaluated, and including by Johns Hopkins and Stanford University. All three of these mobile health services have had a significant impact in their own right. So either on frontline health workers' knowledge and communication skills, or on a range of health outcomes, including birth preparedness, immediate and exclusive breastfeeding, complementary feeding, family planning, routine immunization, and more. So based on this success, this impact, in 2014, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare decided to adopt Mobile Academy and Kilkari. We worked together for 5 years to redevelop and scale the services to 13 states. By 2019, when we successfully transitioned Mobile Academy and Kilkari to the national government, Kilkari had reached more than 10 million families in 5 languages, and more than 200,000 frontline health workers had successfully graduated from Mobile Academy. And I'm really, really proud and pleased to say that the services are still going strong today, right? And that's like two and a half years later. So I'm now going to talk about 10 key lessons, which you should be able to see on the screen. And really, I may not be able to go through all of them today because time is limited. But Ritesh is going to share both the full deck from my presentation, and there's also an article that has been published in the British Medical Journal of Global Health about the lessons that we've learned, which Ritesh will share with you in the chat. Thank you, Ritesh, so much. All right, so I'm now going to go to the first lesson. All right, lesson number 1, private sector business models are very challenging in low resource setting, particularly if your customers are women and you're talking about maternal health. So digital development projects rarely test the viability of sustainability strategies at the pilot stage. Instead, they develop roadmaps for sustainability, which are often only implemented towards the end of a grant. At that point, it can be really difficult to pivot if your sustainability plan fails, right? So in 2012, BBC Media Action began road testing a commercial business model, which involved revenue share agreements with 6 mobile operators in the state of Bihar. We did this when we still had 3.5 years of donor funding left, right? So we started testing our business model very early on. We adopted this approach to test if it was feasible to ensure the long-term sustainability of the services without funding from donors or the government. So Mobile Academy, we launched it in 2012. 55,000 frontline health workers paid 60 rupees to complete the course from their own pockets. And after we launched Kilkari in 2013, 168,000 families subscribed, paying 1 rupee per week. Now, these fees were affordable by rural women and their families and covered the mobile network operators' costs. But what we discovered is that this revenue did not cover the cost of marketing. Due to the high cost of reaching low literate, low income women who have limited mobility, so they don't leave their homes a lot, they live in media dark communities and can't reach them through traditional advertising channels. And because of this very low price that poor rural families could afford, this business model failed, right? But at least it failed fast. And that gave us time to switch to a public sector business model where the government covered all the call costs, making the service free to poor rural subscribers, to poor rural women. So this is a very important lesson that we learned, which is test your business, your sustainability strategy early because it might not work out. Lesson number 2, and this is a biggie. You may pilot apples, but end up scaling oranges. Okay, so BBC Media Action's complementary suite of 3 mobile health services, in fact, there's a 4th, which I haven't mentioned, but anyway, had an integrated theory of change. So we designed them all to complement each other, right? And to reinforce messaging. So to train the frontline health worker, to equip her with a job aid, and then to reinforce all the communication that she was doing face-to-face with direct audio messages to the family, right? So it was an integrated theory of change. But when the national government ultimately chose to scale the solutions, they adopted Mobile Academy and Kilkari, but not Mobile Kunji. And Mobile Kunji, which was the job aid, was not adopted because it was thought that smartphone-based job aids would make IVR and print-based tools obsolete, right? And sadly, to this day, that is still not the case. Kilkari and Mobile Academy were also not rolled out by the government in the same states at the same time, right? So they were rolled out of sequence. So this left gaps in our theory of change. That's not to say that the program at scale, when it was evaluated by Johns Hopkins, hasn't had a significant impact, but arguably, our mobile health tools may have had an even greater impact at scale if they had been rolled out together. However, this highlights a really important and hard lesson that the project learned, okay? That if you pilot a suite of digital tools and services, you may find that only 1 or 2 of them, only one aspect or 2 aspects are eventually scaled by the government and achieve sustainability. And this actually may reduce the overall impact of your program. So the more ambitious your program is, the more different components it has that your theory of change relies on, the more risk there is, right? That one part of it won't be scaled. All right, next slide. All right, next lesson. When we're talking about scale and sustainability, there is a trade-off between ideal solution design and affordability. The hard realities of delivering public health services at scale with constrained resources may require a much more pragmatic approach than many pilots employ. In a donor-funded pilot, it's possible to design and test and implement an ideal program, right? But in the real world, ideal program design is rarely possible. When the national government decided to scale Mobile Academy in Kilkarry, several important compromises to service design were required to accommodate the government's budgetary constraints. For example, number one, number of messages. So when it came time to scaling with the government, BBC Media Action proposed doubling the number of calls to families, saying let's call them twice a week instead of just once a week. We can communicate a lot more, we can reinforce our messages, we can emphasize things. Let's double the number of calls. But the government understandably expressed reservations because this would have doubled the call costs. And when you're communicating with 10 million women, I believe Kilkarry is now communicating with 23 million families, doubling your call costs is actually a lot of money, right? And not only that, it would have meant that we would have had to significantly increase the technical infrastructure, okay? Because you need the infrastructure to make double the number of calls. And that cost of that infrastructure is pretty big, right? Compromise number two, language localization. So as we know, India literally has thousands of major and minor dialects, and this is no exaggeration. So even in the so-called Hindi-speaking belt, I mean, particularly in states such as Rajasthan, but even in Madhya Pradesh, where I am right now, or for example, Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand, we all know that there are many different dialects and distinct languages, particularly tribal languages. So our research revealed that rural women had much poorer comprehension of Hindi than men. Why is this? Because they live in media dark homes, so they're not watching TV, and they're not listening to the radio, and they're rarely leaving the houses. So the men, they go to the bazaar, they hang out in tea shops, they're chatting, they're exposed to TV in shops, they're reading newspapers, so they get a lot more exposure to Hindi, right? But rural women, actually about sort of 50% of the rural women we tested with in 6 states had difficulty understanding Hindi, particularly sort of Sanskritic Hindi. However, understandably, the national government could not afford to create thousands of different versions of Kilkarry and Mobile Academy, right? That would have been way, way too expensive. So as a result, we had to create a sort of lowest common denominator Hindi that could be understood by the largest number of women. But we had to recognize that some women just wouldn't be able to understand it. And this is where I have a quote on the slide in front of you that came from the Joint Secretary at the time in the Ministry of Health. This was his favorite quote, and I think it's extremely good advice. Best is the enemy of good. So if you think about it, it's better to be able to reach 50% of 10 million women with, you know, a lowest common denominator Hindi than to not be able to afford to create Kilkarry in, say, 100 different dialects. So you have to make these really difficult compromises. Another compromise that we had to make was on call timings. When Kilkarry was first piloted, women received calls when they said they wanted to receive them. They told us, look, you have to call us really early in the morning, or you have to call us after lunch, or call us in the evening. But when the government decided to adopt and scale Kilkarry, this approach was not financially viable. Why? Because again, the infrastructure. They had to use the infrastructure to make calls every minute of every day, 13 hours a day, because they're trying to reach tens of millions of women. It's a real luxury to only use your infrastructure in the morning, after lunch, and at night, right? And the rest of the time, your infrastructure is sitting idle, right? So you're able to reach a lot less women that way. So again, these are the kind of compromises that we've had to make. So it's really critical when designing digital development solutions to base them on the limits imposed by sustainability, particularly government budgets, rather than on the perfect pilot. Otherwise, there's a significant risk that the proposed digital solution will ultimately be unaffordable, right? Second. Okay. And Ritesh, you must interrupt me when you want to go to the questions, because if I can't finish all of the lessons, people will still be able to read about them and see the slides. Just let me know, just interrupt me.
Sure.
Okay, lesson 4. Reassess key program components before the scale up. And this is often a really tough one for people, for different projects and particularly NGOs. Because you may have had a great partnership with a technology company, a sort of social enterprise, a small boutique software company that's really awesome and did a fantastic job for you, and you really like them. But what happens when you're talking about scaling in the world's biggest democracy with the national government? Okay, so you really need to understand, like, does your technology partner have the skills and the experience and critically the staff capacity required for a national scale up? Do they have senior engineers in India to not just support the software, but for further development? And there's other things that we had to completely redesign when the government adopted Kilkarian Mobile Academy. So we had to integrate with the government's systems and databases that register all pregnancies and health in India. We had to integrate with the maternal and child tracking system and the reproductive and child health tracking system. Those are huge databases. And our technical architecture had to be redesigned, because you can't say to the government of India, to the Ministry of Health, oh, you know what, my software, it's the technical architecture is not designed to integrate with your databases. Would you mind just redesigning your databases? No, that's not going to happen, right? So you have to be prepared to actually redevelop your entire system, which is what we had to do. And one of the things that we also did is we had to really simplify our system, because the more moving parts that you have, the more challenging it is for the government to procure and sustain that solution, right? So you really have to look at every single key component of your project to see, is that solution going to work for a national scale up, right?
That's
Okay.
a very important point, Sarah. I am sorry, but I just wanted to say that, we have about just 10 more minutes. So if it's okay with you, Sarah, I'm so sorry about this, but shall we sort of move to the Q&A and maybe?
Sure, no worries at all. I'll unshare here.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm so sorry about this. The presentation that Sarah has, it's all very useful, and I've had the opportunity to see that. I have, in fact, shared a link to the lessons learned article, which is the basis of Sarah's presentation. Do take a look at that, whenever you have some time. And I will also share Sarah's presentation, which incidentally also has her email address. So if you have any questions, Sarah has already mentioned that she's very happy to answer them. Having said that, let us quickly sort of jump to the Q&A session that we have. If you all have any questions for Nikita, for Sarah, they're here for the next 10 minutes, happy to answer all the questions that you have. Maybe I can start with one, if that's okay. So the first question, Sarah, I had for you, and you did talk about, ideal solution versus affordability, and that the best is the enemy of good. And in fact, Nikita, you can also jump in if you have any thoughts around that. But how do you sort of strike that balance when you're designing and when you're sort of rolling it out? How do you sort of ensure that? Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Sorry. I can give you an example from the discussion that we were having today. So, I'm in Madhya Pradesh in Maheshwar, working with a fantastic organization called Chaitanya Wise that supports women's collectives. And we are working on a proof of concept for a digital literacy intervention. Well, an intervention to increase women's access to and meaningful use of both feature phones and smartphones. And one of the things that we've been looking at is this sort of role of the digital champion or the digital Saki. Many programs have had digital Sakis in different ways. And we were saying, well, the ideal model, of course, is to have a digital Saki in every SHG. Like there's going to be a woman who has better skills in each women's group who has better digital skills, who could act as this sort of guide for the rest of the women in the group. But what our partner wisely said was, but the state rural livelihoods mission will never scale that. It's way too resource intensive. You're never going to be, I mean, there's, millions of these groups in India. You're never going to be able to have a digital Saki in every group. How are you even going to monitor them? How are you going to supervise them? How are you going to incentivize them? How are you going to pay their salaries? So what we're looking at is how do we mirror the structures and the processes that are already at scale. So in our proof of concept or our pilot, rather than going for a really resource intensive, like the perfect pilot that we know is going to have this amazing impact, we look at the reality of the situation at scale and design for that. Even though we know it will have less impact, that is the reality. There's no point in designing for Shangri-La.
Thank you for that. Nikita, any thoughts that you wanted to add? I mean, you designed
just very briefly, Ritesh, I think I completely agree to what Sarah is saying. And I think this is something we keep sort of, also talking about at Quest, that there's always this battle between should we put something out quickly versus try to wait for that perfect solution. And in my mind, and I think having worked in tech teams, and especially working on tech solutions, it's a big, big learning that there's this idea of perfection is very elusive. So there is nothing in some sense that, you would get a perfect solution. So I think, especially in the times that we're living in, which are so uncertain and things are so they change so quickly, I think it's important to get things out to people quickly and be agile in our mental model so that, we can incrementally build. And also the benefit it offers is that when you build things incrementally, it's a lot easier to course correct as well, versus if you've spent years already building something and then you have to change, it's like, you just never can get out of that cycle. So build quickly, put out quickly, fail fast, come back, build more, go back to the ground. So I think that really works. And especially in the VUCA world that we're in, I think that's far better approach to take than trying to build those perfect solutions. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, that makes complete sense. And my takeaway, I guess, is, this quote that Sarah used, best is there and you're good. I'm going to sort of put it up somewhere. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Colleagues, if you have any question, I'm just trying to sort of see if you have any hands raised, and do raise your hands if you have any questions for any of the speakers. But yeah, as you do that, I mean, I actually have another question that I can ask, and this one is for you, Nikita. What I found very interesting was this 21 day. You did talk about the whole idea behind the 21 days of lending the phone. But yeah, it's how did you come up with this number? Why not 22 or why not 20? Maybe talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, it could definitely have been 22. That wouldn't really change much. But the idea was that, should we give the phones to a learner for the entire duration, or should we give it for a shorter duration so that phones could change more hands? So, so it's again a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, right? That is it again trying to make sure that through this phone, learners being able to learn everything? Or if the objective is to give them exposure to what all is possible when you learn digitally, right? Because like I said, conventionally and traditionally, we're not used to learning digitally, and especially in India. So just this whole experience of learning digitally, that the kind of empowerment that comes with the fact that you can just learn so much and you don't have to depend upon teacher told me so and hence I have to do this, to being the driver of your own knowledge. I think that's the exposure we want to give, and focus on some of these key skills, right? Like it talked about a crash course in negotiation, for example. And it's really about saying that how do I then go back to my parents and say that, look, I did this for 21 days and you've seen me learn, and this is what I've been able to experience, and this is how it'll benefit me in the future. And hence there's a case for me to have access, which may not be a personalized mobile phone, but even if there is a shared device at home, but being able to have it for those 3 hours and being able to learn, I think those are aspects we're focusing on. And I think it's about just building behaviors. So I think it's really that. And hence, we thought that it should be not short, it should not be too short, but it shouldn't be like 3-4 months, because then the limitation becomes that, not many learners are going to be able to benefit out of that program. And especially we also run these 3-month programs with our vocational partners. So with that 3 months, how many young people do we give exposure to becomes really, really critical. So that's why we thought 3 to 4 weeks is a good duration to at least focus on these objectives. The objective is not to teach them everything that they need to learn through this experience. So yeah.
Fair point, Nikita. I think we have some question. Jay has a question. Jay, please go ahead. Do introduce yourself before you ask your question.
Sure. Thank you very much, Ritesh. Myself, Jay Nandidatta, and I am part of BBC Media Action. In fact, I work with Sarah, and I have worked with her on Mobile Kunji Academy and Kilkari for the last 8 years. So I have been in the journey with Sarah, of course. So I just have this question for Nikita. In fact, Nikita, so while those phones were distributed, were there any exercise to find out if the phones were used by the intended women and girls, or was it that the phone was being used by maybe the brother or the father or somebody else, or how much by the intended user and how much by other family members? Because for those 21 days when the phone is with them.
Yes, that's a great question, Jay. So for us, we put a lot of what we wanted to transact to these learners into the mobile application that I spoke about, right? And then it captures a lot of data in the back end. So our assumption is that if there is courses being learned, hopefully it's not the fathers and the brothers doing those courses, but the girls themselves. So one of the premise that we initially, when we give the phones off to these young girls, the contract we have with them is that, look, it's meant for a certain purpose. So while you're free to use it for other purposes as well, while you have it for 21 days, but make sure this is what you do at least at the minimum. So that's what we nudge them. And also then there are also, to every girl, we had attached a coach. So there would be regular check-ins in these 3 weeks with the coaches to check like what they've learned, how much they're learning, what are some of their challenges, because just handing somebody again a phone would not ensure learning, but it's about then also supporting them through that process of learning. So those coaches would also regularly check in. But of course, I'm sure if the women are learning for 5, 6, 7 hours, there could be other times of the day, others may be using the phone, but it also had a limited access to internet. So if we were giving data for 1.5 GB a day, it was enough to ensure that all the learning kind of happens. And then beyond that, we didn't want to control what was happening as long as some of the basics were being done. So that's how we monitored some of what we were doing.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have time for just one last question. Medha has her hand up. Medha, please go ahead. Introduce yourself and then ask the question.
Yeah. Hi, Nikita. Hi, Sarah. This is Medha from Technos of India. And one question I had for Nikita was that the whole idea of mobile library is pretty interesting. But when we are implementing such kind of program on ground, one issue that we are facing is the behavior, the social norms that is prevalent amongst the community members. So was there a drive, like a sensitization drive that was conducted before launching this mobile libraries so that people are more acceptable towards it and kind of come forward and try it in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely, Medha. I think those are definitely critical things. And, we also definitely had instances where we had parents show up at, ITIs and saying, why are you giving our daughters these phones? We don't want them to be exposed to all this. It's a bad thing. So there are definitely instances like this. And, that's also an opportunity for us to engage with these parents and talk about the value added brings. So like I said, the parent and the family engagement piece becomes really, really critical for some of these interventions to succeed. So like I said, we would send out information pamphlets for the parents along with the mobile phones to say that what is the purpose and why we are doing it and how it's going to benefit and how you can actually support this entire process, and a bunch of FAQs about the do's and the don'ts, etc. And I think there is also a regular campaign that goes along with the mobile library processes. Like I said, through IVR messages, we would send direct messages to parents to say that, okay, your daughter has been given this phone for 21 days. This is what it is. And this is how you will have to support the process. And if you've got issues, then here is a number you could call us at, and we would be happy to engage. So yeah, I think these challenges are likely to exist, but you have to find a way to engage with the parents in various ways to be able to bring a certain acceptability. Because I do strongly believe that when it comes to digital access for women, it's more social factors than economic, right? And we have to work on those social factors alongside to some of these things to succeed. So yeah.
Completely. And in fact, thank you, Medha, for that question. And thank you, Nikita. In fact, Sarah made a very important point, and which actually could sort of take another conversation. But yeah, that she just points out, I'll just read it out for everybody, that just to say, we found that 50% of Kilkari High listeners were men, and that the government of Chhattisgarh distributed more than 2 million smartphones to rural women. But an independent evaluation found only a 3% increase in women's use. So yes, working with the social problems, as Nikita mentioned, is very, very important. Otherwise, nothing really works. I'm sorry, we are sort of short on time now, so we'll have to wrap up on that note. I wanted to thank all the attendees and wanted to point out that if you have any questions, if you have Nikita and Sarah's email, write to them or write to me, and I'm happy to seek responses from our speakers or directly connect them to you as necessary. Let me also remind you that we will be with our, ready with the next webinar happens on December 15th, which will be about solutions which facilitate access to government schemes. And we hope to bring to you a stellar list of speakers like we did today. I wanted to thank Sarah for your time, Nikita for your time. I know both of you have been very busy. Both of you have been traveling, and you've still taken the time to come join us. Thank you so much for it. And on that note, all of you have a wonderful evening. Goodbye. See you next month.